Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's guest is a special one. It's one of the most incredible stories that I've heard, at least in our bodybuilding industry, for quite some time. I think you guys are going to find it enjoyable, but at the same time, sympathetic. Larry Pollack, our guest, is a lifelong, true hardcore bodybuilder. Competed with me back in the 90s. He's still competing to this day, and he's got a great story. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
Now, yeah, I've seen your story. I know you've been on a couple other YouTube channels with it, but I figured that we needed to get the Dave Palumbo version of the story out there. First of all, let's go back before all the insanity happened. And how did you get involved with bodybuilding? Because I had my own introduction, at a certain age. What was the first remembrance that you can say, hey, I want to be a bodybuilder?
Well, actually, when I was in junior high school, I was in a special ed class, and there was a young kid there who was already training for bodybuilding, and he was like a miniature Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I started lifting weights with him, and he gave me a book, Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And as soon as I read that book, I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Quickly.
I found the local gym, which happened to be Don Peters' gym, which later turned into a Gold's Gym. And at the time, all the pro bodybuilders were training there. That was the first gym I ever walked into. So I walked into that gym. The first bodybuilder I ever saw was Bertil Fox.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one for a first one.
Yeah, I was staring at him through the window, and I just saw these two ginormous black arms lifting, shoulder pressing like 200-pound dumbbells, and it just blew me away.
Yeah.
And that's the first gym I ever joined.
Wow. And how old are you?
I had been lifting for a couple of years, but I was about maybe 15.
Wow. Oh, so you got an early start. When was your first show? How old were you?
I was 16. Mike Sable was my trainer, and I won the Saddleback Valley Classic. And then after that, I won several more shows. And then I went on at 18. I won the Continental USA. And later that year, took second to Sean Ray at the Teen America.
Oh, wow. That's it. Wow. So you go back way back. How old are you now, Larry?
52.
Okay, so you're 2 years older than me. That's isn't that crazy when you think about when you saw Sean there, and then you probably didn't know who he was, just some guy, and then you see him go on to obviously huge success in bodybuilding, winning the Arnold Classic, placing second at the Olympia. And I'm sure when you first saw him, as a teenager, you probably never imagined he'd be that great, huh?
Honestly, I ran into him at the Orange County Muscle Classic a week before, and he was fully clothed, and I actually thought I was going to beat him. I looked at him, I thought, this is the guy they're making a big deal about. He's small. And we got to Atlanta, and they were doing weigh-ins the day before, and he stripped down to weigh in, and I looked at him, and I'm like, oh my God, I got problems now.
I was interviewing Franco Santoriello a few weeks ago, and I believe that Franco beat him at the teen nationals that year, right?
I heard that interview, and
or maybe 2 years after.
Maybe it was the year before, because Sean won that teen nationals.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he won the light heavyweight. He was 19. I don't know if he competed the year before.
He probably did. That's probably what it was. He probably lost when he was 18. Yeah.
Yeah, he won light heavyweight, and he won the overall. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, so you're a successful teen. Now you're getting into the open category, or before you get into the open category, explain to us, what's going on in your life outside of bodybuilding. What are you doing to make money? Are you getting in trouble? What was going on?
Well, at that time, my whole life was bodybuilding. I mean, I literally that was my whole focus. And I trained at Gold's Venice and Worlds in Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. And basically, I sold steroids and bounced in nightclubs.
Which is what a lot of bodybuilders did back then, right?
Pretty much everybody, yeah.
And what year was that in?
Well, that would have been
Mid 80s?
85.
Okay. Now, anabolic steroids were not controlled substances back then. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't legal to sell them, but they were not controlled substances under the
No, it was prescription, but it wasn't illegal. And we didn't actually think of it as, we thought of it like selling whey protein. I mean, literally, you could go in the gym and buy it at the counter. No one made a big deal about it. Right.
What were the, how widespread was its use in like Gold's and all those gyms at the time? Was everyone on it like it is today, or was it only like a select group of guys who were in the know?
Well, actually, that's interesting you asked me that, because when I went to the Teen America, they were interviewing everybody right before the show, and they were asking people, do you take steroids? And I said to them, yeah, of course I do. Everybody takes steroids. That wasn't the politically correct thing to say.
No, of course not.
And Sean came on right after that and said, no, I haven't had to do that yet. Okay, yeah, sure. But yeah, I mean, everybody did.
Yeah, they did. What were like a typical cycle back in the 80s at that time? That's before my time. I don't know what guys used back then.
I think the 70 guys, because I trained with Mike Menser at a time, mostly took just like Deca and D-ball. That was pretty much it.
Right.
But in the 80s, EQ just was getting popular, parabolin, same stuff you got now, basically, just lower dosages.
Right. And it was real. How easy was it to get the stuff back then? I mean, for you as a dealer to purchase the stuff, and where would you get it back then?
Well, actually, I just got a hookup with a pharmaceutical wholesale company, and I was literally buying crates of steroids. Right. I just pull up with my truck and load them up. And I'd take them all to Golds and Worlds and sell them.
That's funny. What would like a 10cc bottle go for there at that time?
Wow, that was a long time ago. I can't even remember. Maybe $20.
Oh, wow. That's cheap. Yeah, that's really cheap. You must have been paying almost nothing for them, I'm sure.
And Luis Frides, he was the Brazilian connection. So he would get his stuff out of Brazil. I had all the American stuff. And we were sort of like partners for a little bit.
Were you involved with Dan Duchesne at all during that time period?
He was there, but I never directly dealt with him, no.
That's interesting, because I wonder, he must have had his own connections, I guess, in Mexico, huh?
There was one guy that was the supplier for all of Golds and Worlds at the time, and I just supplied him. I didn't sell to everybody in the gym. I just supplied him, and he sold to everybody else.
That was smart. Yeah, that was a good move.
I don't know who all he sold to, but I know he was supplying everybody at Golds and Worlds.
That's funny. Who was that? Did anyone know who he is, or is he an unknown guy?
He was just a typical on-the-scene bodybuilder, nobody famous or anything.
Right.
I don't want to say his name.
Okay, that's fine. Now, at some point, you got in trouble. Give us the story. How did that whole story go down?
That was just a totally weird off. Not even involved with bodybuilding. I was living with a girl, and we had moved into this trailer in front of my friend's building, and we were setting things up, and she took my car to go get groceries and didn't come back. And I had a trunk load of steroids in there that was due for delivery the next day, and I was calling her all night long from pay phones. And anyways, by the next morning, I found out where she was. When I went to get my car, they had called the police. And
where was she?
She was at some friend's house, just high. They were all high and acting crazy, and I didn't really know what was going on. I walked right into a mess.
Oh.
And of course, me being a 230-pound bodybuilder, they just jumped on me right away.
So you walked into the middle of a drug bust, essentially?
No, not a drug bust. Her and her friends were just high out of their minds. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that at the time. And then when I got there, they had already called the police, saying that I was coming to do something to them.
Oh, they were like paranoid?
I was just going to get my car.
Were they paranoid? Is that what was going on?
Yeah, completely.
So the police come, they jump on you, and what happens after that?
They put me in jail. I bailed out right away. Actually, a friend of mine was a Hell's Angels, and he bailed me out on a $100,000 bond.
Oh my God.
And
Why did they hold you on $100,000? What did they find the steroids? Is that why?
you know, when they searched my car, they found the steroids, and then they went to my house and they found a Mac 11 380 submachine gun and more steroids.
Oh my God.
And they really didn't, at the time, steroids didn't carry much of a charge.
Right.
But they were still upset about, how much I had, because I had literally crates of them.
Right.
So they started charging me with attempted kidnapping, attempted murder, attempted assault, all these attempted things that I was supposedly attempting to do.
Oh wow. So you just walked in there and they arrested you and you hadn't even done anything yet.
Nope.
So
I literally just got there, and here was the cops.
So what goes down now? I mean, obviously you got a lawyer. Did you fight it? I mean, did you go to court? What happened?
Well, I was out fighting the case, and it turns out that one of the girls who was there also high, her father or stepfather, somebody was the sergeant in charge of the West Valley Division. So they were making a big deal about it. So anyways, they raised my bail to $2 million.
Oh my God.
And added some more charges on there and put me back in.
Wow.
And I had a lawyer, and he said it was a legal search. They have nothing on you. And when I went to court, the judge said, illegal search smirch, you're going to prison.
Really?
Yeah, and at 20 years old, I had never been through anything like that. I didn't know how to fight it or how to deal with it. I didn't know what to do.
Right. So you get sentenced to what? 5 years?
Actually, it was 12 years and 8 months.
First time offense, and you hadn't even done anything?
Yep.
Were you losing your mind? I mean, what's going through your head at that point?
I was pretty crazy. I just was like in disbelief. I couldn't believe what was going on.
Wow.
But you get caught up in that system, and if you don't know how to fight it, you're screwed basically.
And your lawyer didn't know what to do at this point?
Well, he said, it was illegal search, and he filed some 1538 motion for dismissal. The judge said no. And at that point, he just bailed on me.
Oh, wow. So you get sentenced to 12 years. Now what do you do? I mean, is there any recourse at this point, or do you serve your sentence?
Well, I had my mother hired a appeals attorney, filed an appeal. It wasn't a very good appeal, and of course it didn't go anywhere. So yeah, you go do your time. There's nothing else you can do. So I went to Chino first, which is a reception center. And while I was there, I get a call, and they're telling everybody where they're being designated. And they told me, you're going to Corcoran. And I asked everybody, what's Corcoran? They said, oh, that's Gladiator School.
Oh my God.
I'm like, great. So I got shipped off to Corcoran. And that was pretty intense at that age.
Yeah. Were you fighting a lot in there?
I'm sorry?
Were you fighting a lot? Was there a lot of fighting going on in there?
In that county jail, there was a lot more fighting. I was fighting like almost every day in the county jail.
Right.
Because you're outnumbered.
Yeah.
Prison is different. It's very political. So, yeah, I did have to do some. Went in a cell and fought a big guy when I first got there, just to prove myself. But there it was more. There was riots and shootings and stabbings. It's a little different. Not as much one-on-one fighting, but right. Yeah, there was fights all the time.
You wound up serving 5 years. Was that because of good time? How did that work out?
Well, they had halftime at the time, so on halftime I would have done about 6.5 years.
Yeah.
But I actually filed my own appeal when I was in there. And 5 months before I was going to get out anyways, it was granted.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
So they let you out after 5 years, essentially.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm. When you got out, you obviously were still a young guy, 25 years old. Were you like mentally traumatized at that point? I mean, was it something that disturbing that it affected you and maybe still affects you to this day?
I don't know if it still affects me, but I can tell you when I got out of there, I had no feelings at all.
Right.
Nothing. I didn't get mad, didn't get sad, didn't get happy. There was just nothing in me.
Uh-huh. You
Yeah,
get
I
like
had no
numb?
emotion. Pretty much, yeah. And I was that way probably for, 2 or 3 years
Wow.
at least.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough as a young guy. So what do you do to regroup once you get out of prison? I mean, I'm sure you can probably tell me hours of stories in prison, but let's assume you got out, you're ready to start over. What do you do now for work? I mean, how do you make money? Do you go back to
Well,
selling
actually,
steroids?
even prior to getting out, I was going to college the whole time because I knew I needed to do something with myself.
Right.
The prison just was not for me. So they actually had Chapman College where I was at, and I just lifted weights and went to college the entire time and almost finished my entire degree while I was there.
Wow. Cool.
So prior to getting out, I had a job lined up in a law office. And I got out and started working that job and going to school at Cal State Northridge to finish up my degree. And shortly after that, summer came and I got a job working for a knife selling company selling Cutco cutlery. And it was just going to be like a part-time gig on the side. I didn't think anything of it, just to make some extra money. But I actually was really good at it. And I got promoted after 1 year. The first year as a salesperson, I won an All-American salesperson for the whole company.
Right.
And I got promoted to be a district manager for them.
Wow.
And I actually worked for them as a district manager for about 10 years.
That's cool. They're selling knives? Like, is it like, like weapon knives or knives like for cutting steaks and stuff?
Literally high-end kitchen cutlery and cookware.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they're really good knives, actually.
Yeah. And
I was really good at selling them.
so you're working for them. Where do you go from there? Are you bodybuilding at the time still?
I never stopped bodybuilding. Even the whole time I was in prison, I was training the entire time. I competed in all their powerlifting meets. While I was there, I never stopped bodybuilding. And while I was working for them, I was still training. I wasn't competing initially. But one day I was at the gym and John Lloyd, who is Boston Lloyd's father.
Oh, that's right.
He says to me, hey, I'm doing this Masters show coming up in like 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he said, fat boy, why don't you jump into it? And I'm thinking to myself, you don't know who I am. So I dieted for 5 weeks, got shredded, and jumped into it.
How'd you do?
I don't even remember. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I think I did well, though.
Yeah. And that got you back into the bodybuilding world again, huh?
Yeah, like I said, I never stopped training. That's just when I started competing again. So after that, I just kept competing, every 2 or 3 times a year.
And how were you doing?
I placed top 10 in nationals and USA's a few times. Won a lot of local shows. I just couldn't quite get past that top 10.
Right. So where do you go now? What happens now? Tell us the next stage, because at some point it gets hairy again. You're doing good for how long until you start getting into maybe trouble again?
Well, I was, like I said, I was with the knife company for like 10 years. And I finally decided to get out of that just for political reasons. I wasn't feeling like I was getting the recognition I deserved. So I went to operate a chain of gyms down in San Diego, and that didn't work out very well. And at the time, I don't know if you remember, but there was a Dr. Cohen that was supplying almost all the U.S. market out of Mexico with his line of anabolics.
Yeah, what was it called?
He had Animal Power, and there was 2 other brands.
Was it Dankel? Was that the Dankel brand?
There was Dankel, Animal Power, and there was one other one. And
Quality Vet. Quality Vet, right?
What's that?
Quality Vet. Was that what it was?
Quality Vet. That's right. And they were all his. So, like, he supplied the entire U.S. market or at least 80% of it, from what they say, which I believe is true. And then they shut him down, and the market went dry. And there was nothing for a few months, and I saw an opportunity. So I thought, okay, it's legal in Mexico, so I can go down there and open up a lab and do this.
Interesting.
So that's what I did.
What was the name of the lab?
Stallion Labs.
I remember that. Okay, I didn't know that was yours.
Yep. And we blew up really quick. In 1 year, we were like the top lab along with British Dragon.
Yeah.
We were Bill Llewellyn's anabolic reference handbook or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were big on the scene really fast.
So now, what did you do? You hired some chemists down there, or were you doing it yourself? Because no one did underground stuff themselves like they do nowadays. It was obviously a different process back then.
Actually, I did it all myself. I mean,
You
I
did?
had work.
Wow.
I had workers that did like bottling and whatnot, but I did everything. I did all the compounding. Yeah, I had pill presses, peristaltic pumps, filtration machines,
Right.
the big V powder mixing machines. I had a full-on lab, and yeah, I did everything.
It was like Breaking Bad, that movie, yeah? You were doing everything. So now, where did you buy your raw powders from?
Everything came from China.
Oh, so
Everything
even
from
back
China.
then, the China was accessible? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would buy like literally kilos from China.
How did you know to do that? Because, like I said, the internet wasn't, I guess the internet was kind of big at that point. So I
Oh
guess.
yeah, it was big. I was a board sponsor on Outlaw Muscle.
Ah, okay.
And my partner was a guy from Norway who they called Nordic. I don't know what his real name was.
Right.
But he was the big hookup. And initially I started out as a distributor for him. And then he decided to make me his #1 guy.
Ah, okay.
He hooked me up with all the Chinese, and we would get the raws in, and I would make them all. And I would sell them to all the pharmacies down in Mexico.
Oh, so and then somehow they got it into the U.S.? Is that how it was working?
Well, yeah, everybody would drive down to Tijuana and get it.
Were you worried about the fact that they might link you to conspiracy? Because you know how they love to do that kind of stuff. I mean, that's classic U.S. government
That's what
stuff.
ended up happening. But at the time, I thought, okay, I'm here in Mexico. It's legal down here. I mean, we even went as far as gotten permits and everything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I'm fully legal down here, and I'm not doing anything in the U.S. They can't do anything to me. I thought we were safe, literally.
Right. So what was the first thing that happened to you at that point?
Well, Operation Raw Deal went down in 2007, and they just started rounding up people from all over the world.
Right.
And I was watching it. I think I was maybe the last one to go down.
Wow. Were you nervous at this point? Because you had to be like paranoid as hell at that point.
You know, I actually had hired Rick Collins. I called him up and I said, Rick, you know, all this is going down and I'm nervous about it and I want to retain you. And he's like, well, you can't hire me unless, you know, you committed a crime. And so far you haven't been charged with anything.
Right, right.
And I'm like, well, how about I just give you $10,000 and you just hold on to it just in case.
That was smart. Retainer.
Yeah. So, you know, I was like literally sitting down in Mexico, just watching everything happen in the U.S., thinking,
Yeah.
you know, I'm safe down there.
Right, right. How much were you making a month down there, would you say?
Wow, it got really crazy. Towards the end, we were bringing in like $100,000 a week.
Whoa, wow. That's
I
big
had
money.
so much money, I couldn't figure out what to do with it.
Was it all cash? Like, was that the problem?
Yeah, I opened a bank account in Belize and I put like $300,000 in there. And
Right.
like 3 months later, they told me, get your money out of there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess they were contacted by the U.S. authorities, and they told me you got 2 weeks to get your money out. So I wired it all to China and just bought a ton of product.
Which is probably the worst thing you could have done, right?
It was literally like I had so much money, there was nowhere to put it.
Right. You didn't start burying it like Pablo Escobar did you?
I actually had a safe built into the ground, like
Wow.
in the cement, hidden, and I was just putting it all in there.
Did you ever think, well, maybe I should just stop at this point because it was getting a little too hairy?
You know, that would have been the smart thing to do. But when
Yeah.
you're bringing in $100,000 a week,
Yeah.
it's really hard to do that.
Were you living large? Were you driving crazy cars and stuff like that?
No, actually, I mean, I had a nice house on the beach down off of Rosarito. But we had a couple SUVs and no, I mean, our life was pretty much, we worked all the time and then we'd just hang out at the beach. I had built this big gym right in my house.
Right.
And I was so paranoid, I almost didn't leave the house other than on the weekend we'd go down to the beach. But
Did you
we
have
weren't,
security working for you? Because I know a lot of the wealthy people in Mexico have security because kidnapping and crime is a big problem with people who have money there.
in hindsight, yeah, I should have. But honestly, the way I got caught was one of the guys that worked for me ratted me out.
Oh, really? They grabbed him and then he ratted?
He got busted for something totally unrelated. I had fired him like months earlier, and he got busted for something at the border. I don't even know what exactly, but he's the one that brought him to me.
Wow. So how did that whole thing go down?
You know, at that point, I was really nervous, and a friend of mine had gotten kidnapped, one of the guys that owned one of the pharmacies in Mexico, and had been gone for months, and there was a lot of stuff going down. But then there was quiet for about 2 weeks. There was no bus, no kidnappings, no nothing. And one night I'm sitting in the room watching TV with my wife. Doors come flying open, and all of a sudden I've got, 15, 16 guys with M16s with laser sights pointing to my face.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Full ski masks, and they look like SWAT.
Right. I'm sure they were. Did it like all of a sudden bring back like flashes of when you were 20 years old and got arrested?
No, actually, at that moment, I didn't really know what to think. I said, "Are you the police?" They said, "Yeah, we're the police." And I said, "All right, don't hurt her." And then they hit me in the face with a rifle, shoved me on the ground, put handcuffs on me, put a gun to the back of my head,
right,
and said, "What's the combination of the safe?"
So they were robbing you basically.
Oh yeah, it was a cartel. It wasn't the police.
Right.
It was the Ariana Felix cartel, actually.
Did you give them the safe combination?
Actually, I had two safes. I had a big safe up in the room next to my bedroom, which is like a big walk-in safe. And I did give them the combination of that safe, but that safe only had about $30,000 and some gear in it.
Right.
The safe with all the money was down in the basement, like buried in the ground.
Did they know you had that one?
They did know, because right as they were taking me out, there was one guy, he was like one of the leaders of the cartel. He says to me, "What's the combination of the other safe?" And then somebody said, "Hey, we got to go. People are coming." And they threw a sheet over my head, dragged me upstairs, threw me in the back of a van, and took me away.
Oh, so they kidnapped you too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they took me out of there.
Where did they take you? They left your wife there?
They left my wife. They didn't do anything to her. They left her. They didn't even touch her.
Oh, well, that was, thank God. So what do they do to you now? They take you, and where do you wind up when you wake up or
Well,
arrive?
actually, I'm in the back of this car, and they got me down on the floor and a sheet over my head. My heart is pounding so hard. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I told them I can't breathe.
Right.
And they transferred me to a van. And then from the van, they took me to some safe house. And I believe it was somewhere near Tijuana. Blindfolded me, took me upstairs to a little room. And I was in a little room with just like a little rack cot with bars on the windows and two guards.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Wow.
And I was just there.
What did they want from you? What did they tell you? Did they say, "Hey, this is what we want more money," or what was the reason for them bringing you there at that point?
They wanted to get in that safe.
Right. So they knew about the safe. They knew it was still there. Did they know where it was?
They knew where it was, and they came to me. Let me turn this off.
Yeah, please.
So they came to me and said, what's the combination of the safe? And honestly, I didn't know the combination. I had only been in it a few times, and it was a really complicated thing to open. It was very delicate, and I literally had to play with it 3 or 4 times, even with the combination, to get it open.
Well, you knew the combination, though, obviously, because it was your safe.
No, I didn't, actually. I didn't remember it at the moment, because I had just got that safe maybe a month earlier.
Did you have it written down someplace, though?
Yeah, it was written down.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't know it off the top of my head. So I started to tell them, I said, it's really complicated to get in. And they said, we're going to play a little game. So I already had gauze around my face, so I couldn't see blindfolded. And they stuffed more gauze in my mouth, and then they wrapped up my whole head. And then they started using my head like a punching bag. And then the guy grabs me around the head, and some other guy grabs my foot and grabs my big toe, actually, no, it was a little toe, with pliers.
Oof.
Starts pulling my toenail out. And at that point, my whole body started seizing up. And the guy says to me, okay, do you want to cooperate now? Or are you going to tell us? And at that point, you're going to tell them anything they want to know.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So, yeah, I'm like, yeah. Well, I'm muffling this. I can't really talk. So they asked me again, okay, what's the combination? So I just made one up.
Right. Yeah, probably most people would do that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to tell them something, right?
How much was in the safe?
Probably about $2 million.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you had a lot of money in there. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you give them a combination, and then what happens?
Well, then they apparently they told me, well, at least the guards had told me that they had said that if they got the money, that was going to be my ransom money, and they're going to let me go.
Right.
So apparently, from what I found out, they weren't able to get into it with the combination, so they just took a torch and dug it out of the ground and opened it that way.
Oh, well, that was good for you, I guess. I think.
So but then they decided they didn't want to let me go. So they were transferring me from that safe house to another safe house somewhere else. And while I was being transferred, they put me on a phone with my brother who was in the States, just briefly. And I asked him, I said, do you know where Denise is, my wife? And he said, no. And at that point, I thought they had killed her. I didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
So then they told me, they said, okay, so they took me to another place, and they said, so we need another $1 million. And I said, well, I just don't have another $1 million. You already took all my money.
Right.
And they said, well, your family has money. And I said, well, not that kind of money, they don't.
Right.
And they said, well, your family owns jewelry stores. I'm like, actually, no, they don't own jewelry stores. And at that point, I knew that the guy had ratted me off and was telling him stuff.
Right.
Because when my wife and I had gotten married, we went to see my cousin, who was a diamond dealer in LA, to get a deal on a ring, but he didn't own the jewelry store. He just took it.
Right. So this guy who worked for you thought that your family owned jewelry stores.
Right. Exactly. So I told him, I don't have that kind of money, and they don't have that kind of money. So I guess you're going to have to just kill me now, because there's no way I can get you $1 million. But I did tell him, I said, I have another storage in the United States with about $1 million worth of product, and I could take that to you. Mm-hmm. And I was just telling him anything to just try to stay alive at this point.
Yeah.
So they were trying to figure out, how are they going to get me over there without them getting caught crossing the border to get this stuff. And while all this was going down, they were kidnapping. They had kidnapped and they were torturing other people, and killed a couple people while I was there.
Wow. In front of you?
Yeah, right in front of me.
Wow. That's crazy. So the only reason they were keeping you alive is because they thought you had more money for them.
Basically, yeah. But then towards the last couple of days, they stopped talking to me. Mm-hmm. They were interrogating me literally every day, twice a day before that. And then they stopped talking to me. And that's when I realized, I said, I think they're just like maybe running out of patience, and we're probably next on the list to get whacked off.
Right.
So the whole time we were blindfolded, and we were not supposed to look, but of course I was peeking through my blindfold and looking because I just had to know. Mm-hmm. And I had been watching these guards, and every night when they would go to sleep, and they were just really kids with machine guns.
Right.
At night the jefes would come, the big guys, and they'd interrogate people and torture and whatever. But the rest of the time we're just being guarded by these kids with machine guns. Mm-hmm. And so we're in this place, and they told me if I had to go to the restroom, whistle. And I really had to go. I'm whistling and whistling and whistling, and there's nobody coming. So I get up and I go over to the door and I look out, and there's the two guards. They're dead asleep.
Oh my God.
Just laying there in the room in front of me.
Yeah.
So I took myself to the restroom, and when I went to the restroom afterwards, I walked down a hallway and I looked down into this garage and I saw 2 body bags down there.
Oh.
So I went back and there was a kid there with me named Oscar who was also kidnapped. And I said, man, you know, we got to get out of here. I said, we're going to be next. And he said, no, it's too risky, this and that. I said, look, you can stay, but I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And first we were talking about, you know, trying to jump on them to get their machine guns. But I was looking and they were sleeping. I don't know where their guns were. I think they might have been sleeping on top of them, but I couldn't see the guns anywhere.
Right.
So I told him, I said, you know, I'm just gonna go out. And I literally tiptoed right past their face, 3 inches from their nose, out the door, down the stairway, out the garage, and into this courtyard. So I'm in this big courtyard with a big fence around it, and the only door out was an electric garage door, and I was not wanting to open it because I thought it was going to make noise.
Right.
But now here comes Oscar right behind me. So
Changed his mind. He changed his mind, yeah.
Yeah, and I had handcuffs on, but he was so skinny, he pulled his hands out of the handcuffs. He got his handcuffs off.
Oh, wow.
And I said, you know, I can't get, there's this big gate. He goes, help me up. So I lift him up. He scales the gate, comes down on the other side, and like literally jumps down and makes a big loud boom. And as soon as he did that, dogs started barking in the neighborhood. He looks at me through the gate and he takes off running.
Oh, he left you behind.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking, well, now I've got no choice. I hit that garage door button. It starts coming up. I scoot under there and I take off down the street chasing after Oscar.
Right.
And I'm literally blindfolded with a blindfold on my head still and in my underwear, barefoot, just running down the street in the middle of the night.
Wow. Oh my God.
Broken up street with glass and everything. I didn't care. I wasn't looking behind me. I'm just thinking behind me there's guys with machine guns.
It sounds like a scene from The Marathon Man, if you ever saw that movie with Dustin Hoffman, you know, where he escapes from the dentists, you know, with the running in the glass, on the glass, his feet are all, you know, cut up and everything like that.
Yeah, when you're at that point, you know, my adrenaline's going. I didn't even think about the glass or anything. I'm just hauling ass trying to get out of there.
Sure. So where do you run to?
So we run down the road and we see a taxi. And we were running up to the taxi, waving at it, and the taxi just turns around and drives away.
Oh.
And so we run down to, there was like a bus depot. We were running through there. And somehow Oscar disappeared in the bus depot. I don't know where he went.
Oh.
And I end up out on this highway trying to wave down cars, but they're not stopping for me. Of course, you know, here I am, bodybuilder, you know, half naked, running around in my underwear.
How long had you been with them? A couple weeks?
16 days.
Okay.
And so I just keep running down the road and I get to a taco stand. And there's about a dozen guys in there eating tacos. And I run in there and I said to them, I said, kidnapped, I need help. And they said, sit down, have a taco.
And they probably want to call the cartel to come get you.
Yeah, I'm like, no, you don't understand. I got kidnapped. You got to get me out of here. And they're like, do you want us to call the police? I said, no, don't call the police. They are the police.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it is true down there that the cartel are the police.
That's crazy.
They don't work with the police like they are the police. Like during the day they're police and at night they're kidnapping people.
Wow. So where do you go? What do you do?
So these two guys, they said, okay, come on with us. And they put me in the back of a van. And they said, which border do you want to go to? I said, to Mesa, which is the old border in Tijuana because it's a shorter line. So they drove me to the border and it was way out there. I don't know where I was, but it was a good hour and a half drive to the border.
That was nice of them to take you, I mean.
Yeah. So they took me there and they pull up as close as they can to the border. I jump out and I run up to the border guy at the gate and I'm like, American citizen, you know, let me in. And the guy's looking at me, so he's like why are you like this? I still got handcuffs on. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm kidnapped,
Yeah.
let me in. So finally they come get me and pull the handcuffs off me and put a blanket around me. And then they brought the two guys in that drove me to the border. And I said, no, they're all right. They helped me get here.
Right.
So they bring me in and they tell me that my family's on their way to come pick me up. Meanwhile, I'm getting interrogated by the FBI, asking me, what went on. And I'm telling them about the kidnapping, but I of course, don't tell them about the rest of it.
Of course.
And they brought in the Mexican police and they said, hey, we want you to go with us and take us show us where the kidnap place is.
You're like, no way, man.
Yeah, they're like, we'll protect you. I'm like, yeah, who's going to protect me against you? Yeah, no, I'm not going. So they said, no, we can't make you go. So anyways, I'm sitting there with the FBI, and then all of a sudden here comes walking in DEA, and they just grabbed me and said, he's going with us.
Oh, really? So you were wanted by them, huh?
Yeah, and the FBI didn't even know what was going on. The FBI is like, what's going on here? He says to me, there's something you didn't tell me?
Oh, my God.
And they take me and walk me out the back and put me in a car and take me up to a station up in San Diego.
You're in a pretty bad state when you're happy that you're being arrested by the DEA because to get you out of the Mexican cartel's, stronghold there.
It was like stay in Mexico and get killed or go to the jail in America. And right now, jail in America look better.
Yeah. So is that what they did? They arrested you?
Yeah, they arrested me, and they took me up to some station they had up there in San Diego, and then they arrested my wife, and they bring her in, and they told her, he's really dirty and this and that, and whatever. But for some reason, they put us together for a minute. Maybe they were listening. Maybe they thought we were going to say something. And I just said to her, don't say anything. She said, I already told him I want my lawyer. And so they said to me, okay, you could help yourself, you could help your wife. And I said, what am I being charged with? And they said, well, it could be this, it could be that. I said, it could be. I said, how much time is that? And they said, it could be 5 years.
No.
I said, I want my lawyer.
Yeah.
And one of the guys tried to get tough, and the other guy says, no, he invoked his rights. That's it.
Yeah.
So they put me on I think I had $1 million bond or something like that, property bond, and my wife was on 100,000. So my wife bonded out right away, and I went to court like a week later, and the U.S. attorney at the time was asking for no bond, saying it was a flight risk and this and that. But I had a good attorney come in. Actually, Rick sent him, and he argued for bond, and they granted me
who did he get you?
$500,000 property bond.
Who did he get you?
I can't even remember the guy's name. I only met him that one time in court. He just called somebody in San Diego, and
it was probably the lawyer that he used with me. I bet you. Was he an older guy?
What's that?
Was he an older guy with like whitish hair?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, it was the same guy. Yeah, he had. Because my case was in San Diego too, and so I think we used a local guy there. He was really good. So you probably had the same guy. I forget his name.
Yeah, he just came right in, and
he knew everyone there. Yeah. That's funny. So you're in San Diego now. You bond out. Okay. Do you have any money left at this point, Larry?
Not a lot. I didn't have a lot, but I had some. But they had gotten most of it.
Right. Now, what about all your property down there in Mexico? Did you just kind of leave it?
Everything. I left there in my underwear and left the house. I mean, my wife took the cars and went back across the border.
Right.
Whatever she could take in the cars, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah, they pretty much ransacked the place and took everything.
So the whole lab and everything was just left there?
Everything left.
Wow. It's crazy.
The 3-story house, everything just left.
Well, you owned it, right? Didn't you own the house, though?
Yeah.
So you never try to, hire a real estate person down there to, sell it for you or something like that?
Not at that point, no. They told me that I was wanted in Mexico now and all this other stuff. I wasn't going back there for anything.
So what happened with the charge you caught now in the U.S.?
So now I bond out, and this case was out of Northern California because it was in the same guys that brought the Balco scandal.
Sure.
It was Jeff Nedrow and some other guys, and they were the prosecutors.
Novinsky?
Bought deal.
Really?
What's that?
Was it Jeff Novinsky or no?
Jeff Novinsky was the head guy in charge of it. Jeff Nedrow was the U.S. attorney.
Wow. So they tried to bring you into that whole raw deal thing. What were the actual charges you were facing?
The charge was conspiracy to distribute.
Okay.
And it was actually kind of a bullshit charge because what they came out with in the headlines in the newspaper, they said international steroid ring busted.
Right.
100 people rounded up and busted like there was this huge conspiracy between 100 people all over the world, which was totally not true because I didn't know any of those other people at all.
Yeah.
And it turned out they were saying that me and my wife had conspired to distribute.
Gotcha.
That was the charge. And they said that somebody up in Northern California got caught with a bunch of gear with other drugs who I had never even heard of before, and some of it was ours. So therefore, I manufactured this stuff with the intent to distribute to the United States.
Gotcha. Okay. So what was the repercussion? What was the outcome of it? Did you beat the charge?
So actually, I was out on bond for 3 years, and I had gotten some information that on the whole kidnapping thing that the DEA was in cahoots with the cartel involved in the kidnapping.
Really? How did you find that out?
They were the ones that sent them. The DEA literally sent them after me.
Really?
Because I was outside their jurisdiction, so they couldn't do anything.
Wow.
So they contacted the Mexican police, and the Mexican police are the cartel, and they went after me.
Oh, so they figured before we turn you into the DEA, let's get the money out of you first, right?
Well, I don't think the DEA thought that because I don't know if they knew I had money.
No, that's what the Mexicans, though, wanted. They wanted your money before they turned you back.
They wanted the money.
Yeah.
No, but they weren't gonna turn me over. I think they were just gonna kill me. Actually, the DEA, when they picked me up out of Mexico, they said, you weren't supposed to come back.
Oh my God.
And they said there was a bodybuilder in the morgue down there who was found mutilated, and we thought it was you.
Oh.
They said you weren't supposed to come back. And it's funny, they said, John Romano. And I'm like, yeah, I know of him. They go, what do you think of him? I'm like, I some of the stuff he says is okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's a cult.
Oh,
and I'm like, no, it's not a cult. They're like, yeah, it's a cult. You're involved in a cult. So
they knew that John was down in Mexico before?
I guess they knew him because he was already writing articles for MD about steroids in the magazines.
Yeah.
I don't know why they threw his name out there.
That's funny. That's interesting.
But that's just all that they knew.
Right. So what did you do at this point? How do you?
So now I'm on bond for 3 years with an ankle bracelet on.
Yeah.
I actually competed while I was out on bond with the ankle bracelet on.
I think I remember that actually. Someone sent me the picture of you. I didn't realize who you were at the time, but I did see that picture.
Yeah, actually, I had planned to go compete in the Excalibur prior to getting arrested, and afterwards, I'm like, I'm still going to compete. So I told John Lindsay, I said, I have this ankle bracelet on, but I still want to compete. And he's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
so
John doesn't care. John will take your freaking your application money. He doesn't care.
Yeah. So I was actually kind of making a statement to the DEA, like,
right.
Yeah, you arrested me, and here I am. I'm on stage.
Right. You weren't like afraid they weren't drug testing you or anything like that?
Nah, they didn't drug test.
Gotcha. So how does it turn out? How does this whole thing pan out for you?
So I told my wife, if anything ever goes down, I'll make sure you don't get in trouble. So when all this stuff came out about them being in cahoots and whatnot with the cartel, the DEA, I went to my attorneys and I told them, I want you to bring this up in court, and I want you to tell everybody what they did.
Right.
And they come back to me the next day and they said, okay, we got a deal for you. If you take this deal, we'll let her go. It was like 24 months.
Okay.
And I didn't want to take any deal, but at the time, I told her like I would make sure nothing happened to her.
Right.
So I took it just to let her go.
Yeah.
And that part of the deal was that there no one was going to rat on anybody.
Okay.
I wasn't going to rat on her. She wasn't going to rat on me. That was going into it. And they said, okay, so you don't have to rat on anybody, but they want you to meet with them and tell them what you did. And I said, well, why? They already know what I did. He said, well, they just want to hear it from you. They want you to tell them what you did. I'm like, all right, that's fine. They already have it in writing. Mm-hmm. So I meet with them, and they're asking about what went on down there. And then they start asking me about other people. And they're basically trying to get me to rat on other people while they're in the room. So I told my lawyer, I said, can I speak to you privately? So we go in the other room, and I said, what's going on in here? He goes, you're screwing it all up. I'm like, what do you mean I'm screwing it up? I told you I'm not ratting on anybody. And he says, well, let's just go back in there. And he says, can we continue? So we continued, and we get to the end, and these two DEA officers said, well, we don't feel like we really learned anything that we didn't already know. And then Jeff Nedrow, the head prosecutor, he says, well, that wasn't part of the deal. That's why it's 24 months. So that was the end. That was it. So they sent me to 24 months.
Oh, so in other words, if you would have ratted, you probably would have got nothing, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. No, I would have walked.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to rat on anybody. They didn't care who it was.
Sure.
They were trying to get me to tell on my brother or my mom, or they don't care. Just tell on somebody.
Sure.
But that wasn't the deal. The deal was, we weren't going to do that. Actually, when I hired my lawyers, I hired the top attorney out of the Bay Area, and I hired another attorney that worked with him for my wife, because we had to have separate attorneys.
Right.
But when I hired both of them, I hired them together, and I told them, okay, I'm hiring you to be my attorney. I'm hiring you to be her attorney. And she's not ratting on me, and I'm not ratting on her, and neither one of us are ratting on anybody. Mm-hmm. And then I hired Rick Collins to watch both of them.
Supervised, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Smart.
So actually at the very end, her attorney came to me and said, they came to me several times and told me, if she cooperates, that we'll let her go. And I just told them, oh, she'll never do it. I can't imagine it. And he never even told her that that was an option.
Oh, that was probably a good thing. she might have changed her mind. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Are you guys still together?
Oh, no. That ended shortly after that.
Yeah, it's hard for your marriage to survive after you have the cartel come to your house with the machine guns in your face. Yeah.
I don't think it was that part. It was after they sent me off to prison. Yeah. I left her to run the gym that I had started, and she just couldn't do it by herself.
Right.
And I was only gone for 14 months, and she hung in there for 12 months out of the 14 months. And 2 months when you get out, she just split.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you still have the gym?
Actually, that gym shut down, and then so I opened it right when I got out. Shortly after, I opened a brand new gym.
Cool. What's it called?
It's called KO Gym, and we're in Ventura.
Oh, there's your shirt. I see the shirt on. You got it right on your shirt.
Yeah. And I've had this gym now for 5 years. It's probably one of the few hardcore gyms left in the country anymore. Real hardcore.
Right. How's the people of the area like it? I mean, do you have a good membership?
It's interesting because you have your fitness centers all around, your 24-hour fitnesses and whatnot. But we have our hardcore people. They come from all over, like literally all over the county. They come from San Diego.
Wow.
Actually, not San Diego, Santa Barbara, Camarillo. I mean, they drive 50, 60 miles just to come to our gym. Awesome. Because there's nothing else like it anywhere.
Right. That's cool.
And we put on powerlifting meets. We're USPA powerlifting center, so we put on 4 meets a year. And it's really good.
Let me ask you a question, Larry. Is it tough now living an ordinary life? Because I mean, you were living the high life for quite a while when you were younger, and then again when you were living in Mexico. Now it's a quiet life. Is it? Or I would assume quieter. Is it hard now to do it the old-fashioned way?
No, not really. Actually, I mean, I still train just as hard as I ever did.
Yeah.
And the gym keeps me busy. Ventura turned out to be a pretty cool place. It's right on the beach. I stay busy, and I don't miss that. No, I think that whole Mexico experience kind of got that out of my system.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever thought about making this into a movie? I mean, this story is unbelievable. It definitely is a movie for sure.
AMC contacted me, and several producers have contacted me about making a movie, and they say it's still in the works and they're in negotiations and whatnot, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them.
It absolutely is the movie of the week. I mean, maybe even bigger than that. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of details you didn't tell us because we don't have 6 hours to sit here and listen to them. But I know that there was a lot more that probably went on that was even more insane.
Oh yeah, I just basically skimmed over it.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah. You know what? It just goes to show we have a lot of survival instincts embedded deep within us, and you must have smelled the fact that you had to get out of there when you did, because obviously it was a risky move on your part, but you're alive today to tell the story,
I think a lot of what happened to me, going to prison when I was young and just things that I had been through helped me get through that thing too.
True. Yeah.
Because, I had convinced some of the guards, I was talking to them all the time, getting them to give me information. And, but I knew that if I stayed there, it was certain death. So there was no option but other than try to get out. So either get killed trying to escape or just stay there and die.
Why do you think those guys, the guards that were sleeping, they didn't follow you? They had to have woken up when the garage door opened, right?
I'm assuming they did, but we were out of there by then.
Right, but you think they would have gotten into a car or called the police, the cartel to come get you, find you? I'm sure they could have found you. You didn't get out of it. You didn't get out of Dodge that quickly, Yeah,
actually we did. It was literally probably 4 o'clock in the morning. It was pitch black. Mm. I ran down that street so fast and turned corners, ran down another hill, around another street.
Yeah.
Into that. I was probably at that taco stand in 2 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I got out of there pretty damn quick.
Do you know if the other guy ever survived? Did you ever hear from him again?
I have no idea what happened to him, but there is something kind of interesting. When I was down there, there was 2 kids, college kids that worked for me, just labeling bottles and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I get hundreds of face.
I think Larry Skype froze up a little bit. This is such an unbelievable story that I can't even believe it that any human being actually went through this and actually had to endure it, because you don't hear, you see this in movies. You don't really think that this is actually something that actually happens for real in real life.
There.
Oh, Larry, we got you back. You said your 2 college kids worked for you, and then what were you saying?
Yeah, so these college kids had worked for me down there, and I got a friend request last week from a name I recognize, and I look it up. It's one of those guys.
Oh, wow. So that's funny.
Yeah, I'm not accepting it. I really don't want to. I don't know what he's.
It's not a good idea. Do you ever get nightmares like that these guys are coming back, and then they come find you or something like that?
I did about the first year after it happened, but no, not anymore.
Yeah. Well, Larry, I'm glad to hear that you're alive. You're going to be competing at the new Masters USA Championships. It's going to be taking place at the NPC Excalibur in December, and trying to get your pro card. What a great ending to the story that would be if you won that show, huh?
It wasn't a planned out thing. I was thinking I was done competing, but my training has been going really well. I stayed practically contest condition all year round without even really trying. And so I just thought, I'm in condition as long as my training keeps going well the way it is. If I'm ready, I'm going to do it.
Well, good luck. Thanks for giving us that great story and telling us what went on and giving us the real inside truth of what was going on in the U.S. government and what was going on in the steroid world at the time. I think it's a little sneak peek into behind the scenes that I think a lot of people don't ever see. Even guys like myself who were involved in the scene, for a while. So I appreciate you taking that time, and you're a great story. And like I said, I hope it ends with a pro card at the end of the year.
Yeah, me too. I plan to keep you posted.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks for having me on.
And guys, that's going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.